I want to just lift up sort of the moment of how we're here in the garden. Again, it's our first Sunday back together in worship, but we also gather in this very unique and what can be seen as a sacred space, not just for us, but for folks who have come before us and laid a foundation and literally planted and invested into this congregation. And so we lift up her parents. And so the symbolism, I don't think, is lost on me, in that we come to the garden, which is very similar to where Christ found himself praying and asking for direction and sort of how to move forward and what to do next. So we want to thank them and their memory for what they have contributed. And we thank you all just for being out here. We are actively practicing social distancing. And believe it or not, although I may look hot, the sun is not that bad. It actually feels pretty good on me. So for now, we're going to ask, by way of background, I want to share that her parents, Fred and Billie, again, were committed members to this church. And as it relates to the background, her mother worked with a landscape architect. So she had experience with doing this type of work. And she worked with the architect to design this actual garden. This garden was not just sort of frivolously thrown together, but an actual architect sort of rendered some printings and all of those things to sort of get us to this space. She was also a very active member of the Goddard Garden Club. I'm not familiar with it, but I imagine it was pretty powerful because whenever folks decide to put club at the end of something, that means they gather often and they have wonderful um, snacks. But both her mom and her dad worked to maintain the garden over the years. And so you can see the passion and how it is passed on to the next generation. And so I want to take some pastoral privilege here and ask Susan if she would come. I would actually like, because I'm here different times throughout the week if I ride through. And it's nothing to come by here, see Susan and her husband Larry literally out on their knees, hands in the ground, tilling the land and sort of pruning the front. Stuff just doesn't happen. They don't have to do it. So for me, to you, and on behalf of the church, total appreciation. Thank you all so very much. Yes. For all so you much. Do. I appreciate that. Continuing to keep this face up. Okay, I very. I appreciate it. Once again, welcome. I don't think I have ever preached in a garden. So this is the first time. Is this your first time attending a worship service in a garden? By show of hands? No? Yes? We've done it here before. All right. Well, this is new for the preacher. But I do want to thank each of you for taking the time out to be here this morning. And whether we acknowledge it or not, in many ways, because of the times that we live in, even our presence here is somewhat of a risk. And so it shows our commitment to Christ and our commitment to living the Christian life that we proclaim. So I won't keep us long because it is a little hot. It feels good. But I'm going to lift for your hearing once again the text that you just heard, which is Psalm, the shepherd over. And so I want to preach from the simple subject of climate change. Climate change. The business of caring for God's creation is one of the urgent, great moral challenges of our time. Over the past 50 years, climate change has had an impact on all of us, whether we know it or not. But it's had an especially disproportionate impact on those who are living below the poverty level. As with most environmental stresses that diminish the livelihoods of the poor, ecological destruction has found a permanent residence in low-income communities all across the globe. Travel through any urban, inner city, or low-income neighborhood in this nation and around the world, and one will easily identify, just through using your natural senses of smell, touch, and sight, you will see the effects of disinvestment and pollution. Speaking on the real issue of climate change. Yes, in the midst of politics, pandemic, and protest. Let's just step aside and recognize the real fragile state in which our society finds itself because our environment is toxic. Yes, it's toxic. When you look around, whoever thought we'd be sitting here worshiping with masks on? The environment is toxic. When you go to the grocery store, when you go to see the people you love, you have to wear a mask, you have to wear gloves because the world is toxic. Yes, it has everything to do with you, and it has everything to do with today. But for some reason, our human nature wants to separate and divide our lifestyles into certain categories, often failing to recognize the intimate connections of all things in the universe. For the Christian, this is a misconnection that has wreaked havoc on our spiritual growth and effectiveness for decades. The infant, but those living conditions and food sources must also be supported by ecological stability in our local environments. We're all tied together. What we eat, where we live, what we drive, everything impacts on the other. Climate change has everything to do with the environment. It has everything to do with how we are living today. Climate is defined as the composite or generally prevailing weather conditions of a particular region, as temperature, the air pressure, humidity, precipitation, sunshine, cloudiness, winds, throughout all of that stuff that has to do with climate. What's the climate of our communities? What's the climate of our nation? What's the climate of the church? What's the climate of this environment? Everywhere spark climate change, those recent uprisings. Yes, soon after the death of George Floyd, there was a shift in the communal atmosphere. The season of calm had quickly deteriorated. Widespread chaos was everywhere. The truth is, we've done a miserable job at preparing for the storm. We've done a horrible job preparing for the shift in climate. Remember, no matter what you do, upon, but shift happens.